Hello and welcome back to another episode of Live and Direct with Dr. G. As you know by now, we've taken the past few months off for the summer, and we are back and happy and excited to get ready to have another 5 or 6 episodes bringing to you content to enlighten, inform, and educate you in a manner consistent with what you need to have daily conversations in your circles. I'm Dr. G. I'm going to be joined today with a special guest remotely out of Columbia, South Carolina. We have Attorney Christopher Hart. He also is a state representative, but I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. He is a practicing attorney, and we're going to have a chance to learn some things today. Again, things that you need to know as you continue in your everyday life. So without further ado, Christopher Hart, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are, and anything else you care to share with us.
Oh, man, where do I start? Thank you, Dr. G, for having me on. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. I've heard nothing but great things about your podcast. I hear you guys are doing wonderful things across the state. And I want to say thank you for having me. It's an honor for me to be here. Where do I start? One of the things I start, people see me now, but they don't see the work and the hard work that we put in, that I put in the early years. And I mention that because the interesting that when I speak to schools and I speak to churches and I speak to groups and civic groups, when I tell them, I say, look, I came into high school with a D average, and that's D as in David, not B as in boy. So, and they look at me and they say, wait a minute, you came out of high school with a D average? I say, yes, I came out of high school with a D average. There was no college or school that I could get into. There was no college or school that would welcome me on their campus at that time. So right out of high school, I went into the military, and probably about 6 months, I would say 6 months out of high school, I was in Saudi Arabia. I was 10,000 miles away from home in a war zone at the age of 17 years old. My father signed me up at 17. So 17 years old, I was over in Saudi Arabia, and I remember having the conversation with my mother and said, hey, I'm going to Saudi Arabia. My mother was like, she started crying and she was bawling, and I could not understand why she was having such an emotional time. I was like, I'm just going to Saudi Arabia. Well, me being 17, being so immature and being so young and naive, I did not understand the consequences. I didn't understand the significance of going into a war. I can tell you at age 52, now I do. I think if I had to go right now, I would be the one crying. I would be the one bawling. I would be the one emotional if they tell me I had to go now. So those were some of the life lessons that I learned, going to Saudi Arabia. After Saudi Arabia, I came back to Columbia, South Carolina. I started cutting hair. And I was cutting hair at a barbershop here in Columbia, going to Midlands Tech, taking some classes at Midlands Tech. And from Midlands Tech, I transferred to the #1 HBCU in America, which is Howard University.
Well, I mean, that's disputable, but go ahead.
And I can tell you by far, no question, without any reservation or hesitation, Howard University was the most and the greatest experience I'd ever had in my life. I wish I could do it all over again. It was the best and the brightest African-American and Black minds all across the world. It was people from so many different countries. It was Black people from every single state in the United States. And when I first got to Howard, I thought I was smart. I thought I was intelligent until I met some of those students on Howard's campus. As I realized real quickly, it's a lot of people out here that are a lot smarter than you. So after Howard, I graduated and I came back to South Carolina for law school. And then with law school, so a lot of people ask me, they say, well, why did you come back to South Carolina? I say, well, honestly, it wasn't really my choice to come back to South Carolina. But I applied to 12 different law schools, 12 of them, applied to 12 different law schools. Guess how many I got into?
1.
0. I didn't get into not one school. Actually, the University of South Carolina placed me on the waiting list. I was not accepted. So there was only, out of those 12 schools, I got on the waiting list for 1. I didn't get accepted to any law school at all. So during that process, I was getting frustrated. Of course, I was growing impatient, and I called the law school and I asked for an interview. And I talked to the dean of admissions and I asked him, I said, can I come in for an interview? And he says, well, we normally don't grant interviews. And I said, yes, sir, I understand what you're saying. And I understand what you normally don't do, but here's what I'm asking. Can I come into an interview? He says, you can come into the interview, but I tell you, the only thing we're going to discuss is just the admissions process. And we're just going to go through the pamphlet. We're going to go through the booklet. And I said, I understand. I still would like an interview. And he granted me an interview. And he did exactly as he told me. We went through the process, we went through the booklet, and we went through the pamphlet, and it was very academic-like. And he gave me one opportunity. At the very end of that interview, he asked me one question. He said, if I have one seat left, why should I give the seat to you? And I said, this is my moment. This is my moment right here. And be honest with you, Dr. G, I cannot tell you what I told him. I can't tell you. I can't remember what I told him.
But I had an out-of-body experience, it sounds like.
I remember saying to myself, this is my moment. And it was my moment. And I could tell you about 2 weeks later, I got a letter accepting me into the University Law School.
That definitely was your moment. I'll agree with you 100%.
That's how I'm here. That's why and I have to say, first of all, that was all with the grace, the protection, and the blessings of God. I could have not done any of that without the good Lord above. He blessed me, he carried me, and it's all through his grace and mercy.
And Chris, we appreciate you sharing your story with us. And you left out a piece that I think is significant and important, and that is you are a sitting member of the South Carolina House. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Share with the viewers the area that you represent and how long.
I represent. I'm coming up on 20 years. I know based off of my youthful appearance, you're probably saying, "Wow, that's a long time," but it's coming up on 20 years. I was elected in 2006, and I represent Richland County, the northern and northern west part of Richland County, and it has been a great experience. It's been a wonderful experience. At times, it's been frustrating. But it's been very rewarding for me to have the honor and have the privilege of serving my constituents, because I walked over 5,000 doors and I knocked on 5,000 doors, and I sat in I sat in their living rooms, I sat in their kitchens, I sat on their front porch, and I asked them to trust me. And in 2006, they trusted me. They said, we want you to be our guy. We want to send you to the Capitol. We want you to represent us. We want you to speak for us. And I have to say thank you to the House District of 73 for trusting me to allow me to represent them over the past 20 years.
And we thank you for your service. And you definitely have represented your area well. Everything that I have heard about you over the years, of course, being here in South Carolina, has been nothing but great, nothing but profound. And so thank you for serving. Let's jump into why we have you on today. And again, to all of our listeners, our goal is to educate, inform, and enlighten you so that you can have conversations with some sense and ability of knowing that you're moving and heading in the right direction. And so one of the things that I think is important for anyone in America, especially those that look like us, when you get of a certain age, I always talk about there are certain people that you need to have in your circle. An attorney is one of those four that I talk about. And I'll just mention quickly, I think everyone should have a personal relationship with a physician. Everyone should have a personal relationship with a minister. Everyone should have a personal relationship with a banker. And every one of us should have a personal relationship with an attorney. Sometimes, Attorney Hart, we think that the only reason we need an attorney is if someone has gone to jail or if there is going to be a lawsuit that's going to benefit us. And there are so many other reasons that are never or rarely talked about that attorneys are going to be helpful and impactful in our lives. And so before I start asking a lot of questions, I just want to ask you, because I know you've been practicing law now for nearly 3 decades, and you've settled a lot of cases. So I want to just go ahead and get the first thing out of the way. what's the biggest and most exciting case that you have in your time experienced? And I ask that question because many people think that attorneys are all about suing or getting you out of jail. So let's talk about that first, and then we'll move into some other areas that attorneys are helpful for.
Well, it depends. I have so many. It is so hard to pinpoint just one particular case because every single day is interesting. Every day is unique. We have interesting clients, interesting cases, interesting families, interesting facts, interesting circumstances. So it's hard to pinpoint one.
Right. Understand.
It's very hard. In the very beginning of my practice, I used to do criminal and I no longer do criminal defense. I haven't done criminal defense probably, I would say, since about 2012. That was the last case I did. It was a murder trial that I tried in Richland County, but that's the last time. And if I start with the criminal, one of the most interesting cases I have, which we titled the True Love, and True Love Never Fails. And what I mean by that,
will kill you.
You're absolutely right. True love never fails. And this was this is one of the most interesting cases that I had while I was practicing criminal law. And I'll tell you about some of the civil cases that I've done over the years. I represented a young man. He was a middle-aged guy. And this was 20 years ago. I represented a guy who was charged with armed robbery. He was charged with going into the mall and robbing a jewelry store. And there was cameras and the workers, they chased him out. They did not catch him, but they were able to get the license plate, the make, the model of the vehicle. And once the police came, they did an incident report, they did a police report, and they tracked the vehicle back to my client's residence. Well, my client was arrested. My client was charged with armed robbery. There's also videotape of the man going into the store and also snatching the jewelry and running out. And on the videotape, it appeared to be what it looked like to be my client. And when I met with my client numerous times, my client told me, that is not me.
They all say that.
Not me on the video. I showed him the video. He said, I understand. I'm looking at the same video that you're looking at, and I'm telling you, that is not me. I looked and I said, sir, I really want you. I said, and I told him very specifically, I said, I'm going to step outside this room and I'm going to let you watch this video for as long as you need. And I'm going to come back and we're going to have a conversation. And he repeatedly told me, that is not me on the video. And I sort of had the reaction that most people have, like something's not
like the one I'm having right now.
Correct. Absolutely. And he said, sir, I'm going to tell you who that is. And I stopped and I sat back in my chair. And he said, that's not me on the video. That's my wife's boyfriend.
Okay. Yeah, we'll stop right there. We'll stop right there. We'll save that for another show. Just got to leave him hanging. Let's stop right there. Tell us about a civil case, because I do want to get into some other reasons that people might need an attorney.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's a cliffhanger. We'll save that for another show. So you do also, and then, by the way, that's a good one to quit on. You do also represent clients from a civil nature. Just tell us quickly about that.
Yeah, we do. We do a lot of injury cases, and sadly, we do a lot of death cases, which are wrongful death cases in South Carolina. We do a lot of drunk driving cases where clients have been injured, catastrophically injured, and they've been killed by drunk drivers. It's so sad that in South Carolina that people will not abide by the laws and not get behind the wheel after having too much to drink. And when I say there's no shortage of it, there's no shortage of it. South Carolina is now the worst state in the nation for people being hurt, killed, and injured by drunk drivers. We're the worst. I didn't know that.
That's good information.
And like I say, we have no shortage of folks who've been injured and killed by drunk drivers. Here's the interesting thing about a lot of the cases that we do. The people that we represent who've been severely injured and the families whose loved ones who've been killed, they've been killed, they've been injured. I just settled a case for a very significant number where the driver was killed and the 3 passengers were killed. One person did not die. One person was not injured. And can you imagine who that person was? The drunk driver. For whatever reason, the drunk driver is never hurt. The drunk driver is never killed. And that was one of the most heartbreaking cases that we've dealt with, where everybody in the car was killed. Everybody had died except for the drunk driver. Drunk driver is now serving a significant amount of time in the Department of Corrections, but no injuries, nothing happened to that drunk driver.
Wow. So that's another one that we'll just put a pin in that one and save that for another show. And that's our hearts and prayers go out for all parties involved with that. Let me make sure I say that. Now, I'm going to switch gears, if I can, and just talk a little bit about some other reasons that one might need an attorney just in their circle as they navigate life. One thing that comes to mind particularly with me is the number of people that look like us that leave this earth without a will. Can you talk a little bit about what the process is and the importance of having and securing a will for everyone in your family, and why it's important that we seek out legal advice when doing so?
Wills are very important. They're very important, and especially in the business that we do. We do, like I said, we do the death cases. And in South Carolina, when someone dies, you have a hierarchy of who's going to be appointed over the estate. You have a hierarchy and by statute about who is able to bring a wrongful death case in South Carolina. Here's why a will is important. A will is important because that puts you in sole control of your assets, of your business, of all of your affairs, should you unfortunately pass away, should you unfortunately die. If you do not have a will in place, then it is now left to the government, is now left to the state, is now left to the probate court to determine who is going to be charged, who's going to be the executor. In some states they call it, who's going to be what we call the administrator, or sometimes we call it the personal representative over the estate. But if you do this before you pass away, if you go to a lawyer, if you hire a lawyer, you can say, I want X, I want Y, and I want Z to be left to my son, to my daughter, to my niece, to my husband, to my sister, to my brother. You can control your bank affairs, you can control your property, you can control your cars, you can control all your assets if you have the will. Right. Here's the most significant part about that, Dr. G. The will controls. So while you have the will, the only way you get the probate is if you don't have a will. Now, you can probate the will. Now, you can get into some very complicated issues dealing with probate. But if you have the will, most times you will not need to go through the probate process because that will is going to control. Now, with that, there are some family members, unfortunately, sometimes I've seen it, it's sad. Death brings out the worst in people.
Yes,
and especially when there's some assets and there's some money. I'll give you a prime example. One of the greatest singers, R&B, rhythm and blues singers of all time, James Brown. James Brown went through a very long legal battle from North Augusta, South Carolina, one of our famous long legend rhythm and blues singers. He went through a very, and the sad thing about it is he tried to do everything possible. But when he died, his family members and his spouse at the time could not agree how his assets should be divided, how his funeral arrangements should be made. And that's why it's important to have a will to try to, you may not be able to keep all chaos and confusion down, but that will minimize it if you're able to put in place while you're alive how you want your affairs handled. And that gives you the most control and authority over your affairs while you're alive.
You know, one of the reasons why this is important for me to discuss is because I'm seeing, we're both of the age now where we're getting phone calls about people that have left here. And then followed by those calls are going to be how they left and they didn't have their affairs in order. And as you said a moment ago, a funeral brings out the worst in families. And so I try my best to educate as many as I can the importance of sitting down with an attorney, laying out how you want, and it sounds grim, but laying out how you want your affairs to be handled in the event that you should so leave this earth in an untimely manner. I've planned out my funeral to the best of my ability. With my spouse, I have prepared all of the documents needed for everyone to proceed. How they will split this $7 that I'll leave behind, I don't know. But they have explicit instructions on what to do. I make light of this because, again, it's usually us that does not think about it. And it's not just a will, but can you talk a little bit about living wills or estates and trusts, and a little bit about what the differences in those might be? Because we're at a time where even if we have adult children, it's imperative that we have affairs in order in the event that something should happen to them.
Right. So even with the living will, or sometimes what we call a power of attorney. So you can only effectuate a power of attorney while that person is living, while they're in their right mind, while they're in their sound mind, because that person has to be conscious and they have to be aware that they're giving you the authority to act on their behalf. So once the person passes away, a power of attorney is no longer effective because they can't give you the authority. That goes back to your earlier statement and question about the will. That's when a will kicks in. But while that person is alive, you can have a power of attorney. You can have a general power of attorney. You can have a limited power of attorney. Sometimes when you do real estate closings, you give the attorney, or you give the person doing the closing, a limited power of attorney to act on your behalf. When you go and purchase a vehicle and you change over your tags and you change over your title, you give that dealership a limited power of attorney to act on your behalf. You can also do that with your family members. You can give your family members a limited power of attorney or a general power of attorney that if you become incapacitated, if you're not able to act on your behalf mentally or even physically, that they can do your banking, they can do your real estate, they can do all of your affairs with that power of attorney, and they take that power of attorney to any institution or establishment, and they will honor that as long as it's filed with the Register of Deeds at the courthouse. Also with that, we have what we call sometimes trust. And a lot of people think that because I don't have any assets, because I don't have a lot of cars, I don't have a boat, I don't have stocks, I don't have bonds, I don't need all of that. I don't need a will. I don't need a power of attorney. I don't need a trust. But I'm here to say that you do need it. You need it, and you need it to keep down any confusion among your spouse, if you have a spouse, if you die, or even your siblings, if you have siblings, or even your children. You need all of those things in place. So you have I talked about the limited, you have the general, and then you have what we call a healthcare power of attorney. Here's why a healthcare power of attorney is important, Dr. G. My mother recently passed away back in, earlier around COVID time. And she specifically said that she did not want to have the DNR, which is the do not resuscitate.
Right.
She was very frail. She had dementia. And had she not had that DNR, they would have tried to resuscitate her. That was also my grandmother. My grandmother had us do a medical power of attorney for her, because one thing, my grandmother was old school. She said, when it's time for the good Lord to take me, let me go. Right. Don't try to resuscitate me. Don't try to do anything. When it's my time, it's my time. So that's important. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It gives you that power. It gives you that control. The other thing that my mother mentioned, she did not want a feeding tube. If the good Lord did not give her the will and the ability and to be able to feed herself, she did not want a feeding tube to try to keep her alive. So that's why a medical power of attorney is just as important, because you never know if or when you may become incapacitated mentally or even physically.
Right, and that's important to note. When I recently I had a medical procedure, quadruple bypass, and we had to make sure that we had all of those documents in place, and it was very comforting to know that I have a personal relationship with several attorneys, but one in particular who was able to draw up the paperwork just before my surgery, because you never know. There are no guarantees that you're coming out of the surgery, but I wanted my family to know what my wishes would be, similar to what your mother and your grandmother stated. I felt the same way. But because it happened so quickly, and things happen so quickly, sometimes we don't have a chance. And so I'm saying again to everyone that's listening and that is ready to have a conversation, whether you're ready or not, to be quite honest, conversations need to be held about what your final wishes might be for not just you, but everyone in your family, your immediate family in particular. I've seen, and I'm sure you have, Attorney Hart, I've seen many individuals that are well respected, well represented in our communities leave this earth and leave chaos behind. And some might say, well, I won't be here, so it's not my problem. It's a problem that you don't have to leave behind for those that you love. It's a problem that you don't have to leave behind for those that you care about. And so, again, this is just one of several reasons why an attorney would be good to have in your circle. Another thing I want to talk about just quickly as we get ready to close, Attorney Hart, is if and when someone is looking to develop a relationship with an attorney, with someone like yourself or someone in the area, what are some things that they should look for? And when I say develop a relationship, it might sometimes include a retainer, but most times it may not. But what should we look for in developing a relationship with an attorney?
Well, it all depends on what type of lawyer you're looking for. Again, I only do injury cases, which is civil cases. So I only do people who are catastrophically injured or unfortunate people who have died as a result of a work accident or a car accident, some kind of way they were wrongfully killed, apartment shootings. So in that,
we don't call you just for general conversations, what you're saying.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. No, sir. We do apartment shootings. We just settled a case where 17-year-old high school kid was killed at an apartment complex because they didn't have any security, and they had years and years and years of crime. Just picked up another one in South Carolina where a baby was killed at an apartment complex. So I say that someone, in order to engage in an attorney-client relationship, we would sign what we call a contingency fee, which means that there's no money up front. We don't charge any money up front. We only charge if we recover. Now, with that, there's a 33 1/3% recovery from any amount that we recover. And it's a sliding scale that goes from 33% to 40%. It only goes to 40% is if we file a lawsuit. Sometimes it's necessary to file a lawsuit and go to court and continue that protracted legal battle, but it doesn't ever get any higher than 40%. Now, with the criminal lawyer, you cannot charge based off of the outcome. You can't represent someone criminally and say, if you pay me $100,000, I guarantee you won't go to jail. It has to be a set fee, a flat fee that you charge for a criminal charge. Some have what we call a hybrid. Sometimes in a divorce case, or sometimes even in a civil case, a person may say, well, bring me a retainer, bring me a $10,000 retainer, and then I will charge you hourly once I use the retainer or once the retainer is exhausted. So you have many different forms of fee arrangements and attorney-client relationships that you can enter into.
Right. So, and I'm asking, and that's good information to know, but if I as an individual, as a family man, wanted to have an attorney, like you hear people say, baby, call the attorney, for in a sundry of reasons, what are some things, again, that we should look for in developing a relationship with an attorney?
What
a family attorney.
what you want to look for is someone that you're comfortable with. And it depends on what type of comfort level that you have with that attorney. Say, for instance, some people like large law firms. They want a lot of lawyers, and they like that. Just like being there. Some people like large churches.
Like Morgan and Morgan.
Right. Some people like small congregations. We're a small law firm, but we pack a powerful punch. You get firsthand, up close, intimate contact with us, professional contact with us on a very, very close relationship. Some law firms don't. So it really depends on the type of comfort level that potential client have, right, and that desire for that lawyer. But you want somebody who's comfortable. You want somebody who's going to call you back. You want somebody who's going to answer your questions, and you want somebody who you can talk to. Some law firms, you'll never talk to a lawyer. You'll only talk to the staff, and you never meet the lawyer who's handling your case. In our firm, you always get to talk to the lawyer. You always get to meet the lawyer, and you always get your questions answered, and you always get your phone call returned.
Now, I will say this, I can attest, and this is not a commercial for Chris Hart, but I've known you for the better part of almost 25 years, and I've had an opportunity to see you at work with people that I do know and people that have come from circles of people that I do know, and not one time have I not heard anything different than what you just said. The personal contact, the callbacks, the attention to detail, all of those are what I consider to be important features in trying to establish a relationship. Unfortunately, as you stated earlier, you're not the type of attorney that I want my family calling, because that means something has gone drastically wrong, possibly with me. So I just encourage everyone, again, that's listening, if you do not have an attorney, whether it be a family attorney or an attorney for you personally, begin today seeking out someone that you can have ready and available to assist you and your family in your times of needs. Because again, it's not just that someone is going to jail where you need an attorney and you need them to represent a family member. It's not just that someone is being sued, but there are so many reasons, and we didn't get to cover not even a fraction of them, but I'm just happy to have had you on the show to hear a little bit about your history and how you got into law school. I think that's something that if you can't get a takeaway from that, then I don't know who can, because what you essentially said is sometimes you have to bet on yourself to make it happen. And you had been educated at one of the, not the premier HBCU, because I think the people at Livingstone College got something to say about that. But you've been educated and well-versed and well-trained, and so you were successful in getting in, and we're all just blessed to have you serving the state of South Carolina as you have done so for 20 years. And so in closing, I want to thank you and give you an opportunity to share anything that you would like to let the people know how to reach out to you in the event that they need to.
Yeah, we're across all social media platforms. You can find us at Chris Hart Law. We're located in Columbia in the great district of North Main District, 3814 North Main Street. Website is chrishartlaw.com, and we'd love to have you. We'd love to represent you, and you will get what we call a tradition of excellent service. That's what we give all day, every day.
Thank you so much. And again, everyone, if you would, please like, share, and subscribe. Live and Direct with Dr. G. We're going to continue to try to bring you content that's going to help enlighten and empower you as you move about in your daily lives. We're not the experts on anything by no means, but I kind of feel like we know enough experts that can get us to where we need to be. Thank you. Look forward to catching you next time. As always, Live and Direct with Dr. G. We'll see you.
Thank you.